Hi.
Welcome to our panel, The Need for a New Industry Culture. You know, I'm glad we're doing this on day 4 because it's kind of bringing together a lot of topics, a lot of themes we've touched on throughout the conference and talking about change itself, right? And how with all these, new ideas, new technologies, new customer bases, new everything, we have to, we need new mindsets, new cultures to keep up and to reimagine the grid. So, I'm really happy to have you guys up here. This is a powerhouse panel. I'll go down the line and have y'all introduce yourselves, starting with Kim.
Hello, this is working great. Hi, Kim Getgen, CEO of Innovation Force. Innovation Force is helping utilities innovate faster with a software as a service platform. And so utilities that are using our software are making decisions 85% faster on their innovation portfolios. They've cut 120 plus days out of their pilot process, and they're building portfolios of billions of dollars of value. So I'm really excited to be here today and bring the innovation lens to this discussion.
Hello, I'm Nancy Bui-Thompson. I am an elected member of the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. We are the country's 6th largest public utility. We represent 1.5 million people and a little over 650,000 customers, and we're one of the first utilities in the world to declare zero carbon by 2030. My day job, I'm a Chief Information Officer for WellSpace Health.
Good morning, everyone. Carlos Nouel with National Grid. We are a transmission distribution utility in the Northeast, serve roughly 7 million customers, so 20 million people. And over the last few years, I've been kind of trying to drive the organization for a change in a whole different ways, from an innovation perspective, but also from a kind of broad cultural perspective. So really looking forward to be part of this panel. A lot of powerful women, so excited to be part of it.
Sorry about that. The AC yesterday was kind of interesting at the hotel, so I'm a little scratchy. But good morning, everyone. It's kind of hard to compete with Rudy Garza, who's just here a couple of minutes ago. But my name is Janie Gonzalez. I'm the current chair at CPS Energy. I represent, obviously, one of the largest munis in the state of Texas, and now a regional energy company. And so as the chairwoman of CPS, my role is really simple, and that is to support the execution of the Vision 2027 plan and beyond that we have. My paying job is that I'm a CEO of a company called Webhead and Quantum Realm Computing. And so I've had 30 years in the tech space, and so I think it's a perfect timing. And as we talk about organizational change and culture, the example of having women now in an industry that historically has not had trustees elected or confirmed in quite some time is just a pivotal time to also discuss, the need for diversity at the table, not just employees, but also on the governance, because you need multifaceted thinkers and people with skill sets to make this happen.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining me today. So, Rudy was talking about, new generations of utility workforce, but what about the new generations of utility customers? Millennials are starting families and building houses. Well, we're trying to, but and Gen Z's graduating college, and so they're going to be renting and paying their utility bills and whatever. So I got to imagine with new generations of customers comes new generations of customer expectations of their utility, new kinds of relationships to build. Janie, we'll start with you. What ways are you seeing changes in expectations from your customer base?
I think for me, we talk a lot, when I first joined CPS, coming from the tech sector, one of the things that became very apparent to me was how antiquated we were in a lot of areas. We were the best in so many areas. And I would say that one thing that hasn't changed regardless of technology adaptation is customer service. So at CPS, it's all about the community, it's all about the customer. So they continue to do that excellent. And I just wanted to point out, I think the CEO mentioned that he attended so many community meetings. I think Rudy and I did close to 3,000. And it's an example of why we went out to the community. The best way to understand what your community needs is understanding the end user, right? Understanding the different personas of the individuals that have that journey from walking into a customer service center, being able to call, being able to show up to a board meeting. Understanding that journey is really important before you assume that adopting that technology is going to solve that problem, whether it's energy security, energy burden, whether it is having the means to have battery storage, having the means to have an EV. And so it's really important, again, that you understand the user before we start making investments. And I think the conversation we're not still talking about, I think, is that we need to first understand what is our risk appetite to ensure that we're doing the right thing by the customer. Again, just because we have the means to invest doesn't mean we should do it. And so I think CPS has been very mindful and very careful and very strategic about the investments that we're making, whether it's traditional technology or not. And when I mean by technology, I mean like gas versus battery storage, let's say, for example. We're gonna need it all. And just because we need all the generation mix, and just because we need to adapt to technology, we cannot, again, forget what that customer needs and wants and not make assumptions.
And Nancy, Paul was talking about how you guys are, talking to kids, talking to young professionals in your community. What are you seeing?
What we're seeing is people want to get at you all their variety of ways, right? And so we need to be available how they want to talk to us and how they want to communicate with us, right? So we, as Paul mentioned earlier, we were the first utility to launch the TikTok challenge, right? We have over 200,000 followers. We had 2 million hits and impressions. It's not even just TikTok. It's Twitter, it's Facebook, it's Instagram. They can DM us, they can messenger us through Facebook, and you get a human immediately. I think that's the big difference. It's kind of the Amazon of, do I need it today? Can I wait tomorrow? What's the 2-day? Our customers during a time of need, whether it's a personal time of need or just a community time of need, such as an outage, they want instant information. And the last thing, I don't know about you, the last thing I want to do is to call and talk to someone. I want to be able to tweet at someone and say, this is where I live, or this is where I'm going, or to look at an outage map, pick where I might need to go shopping today, and see whether or not they have power. And I want to be able to instant message someone and be like, is this map actually right? What's the update? So I think that's the difference now, is that we are such a level of insatiable information that our customers are expecting us to move quickly and be nimble and be responsive. And so that's where we see that segment of the population. But we also see segments of the population that can't access, right? But we have seen that technology can help give them better access. So we have board meetings, right? We used to have board meetings at like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Like, who can come to that, right? Now with our board meetings and with the advent of COVID, we were one of the few public entities that have continued to allow Zoom meetings, both for our committee, our board meetings, but also our community engagement meetings. Like, we used to go, we still go to, hundreds and hundreds of Sons in Retirement and the Elks Lodge and what have you, but we see that people are either physically disabled, can't afford to go to those locations, have kids. Offering a Zoom option, offering them the ability to hear their voice heard, has allowed our underserved populations, because most have a cell phone, right? It doesn't matter what your income level, your survival is a cell phone. And with a cell phone, you can get on a Zoom meeting. So we've seen that technology has actually helped better engage those populations that have 3 jobs. My mom worked 3 or 4 jobs at any given time. She could not come to a public hearing to tell, her commissioner that, don't raise my rates. But now we're given those opportunities for people who, can't make it, can't go, can't find, childcare. I mean, I heard someone the other day, their childcare is $1,600 a month for one child. For one child. And that's on the low end, right? And so we realize that it's a buckshot approach for many things, how we get our energy, but also how we reach out to our customer. And we need to meet them where they want to be met.
And Carlos, National Grid has a very large customer base over several states, different service territories. And so what I'm curious about is what sorts of processes you have to get this kind of information from your customers, and then turn that around into something actionable.
Yeah, so different to some of the other utilities, that we are obviously a larger utility playing in different states, larger territories. So that personal conversation becomes a lot more difficult when you're dealing with 7 million customers across multiple states. But I think the challenge continues to be the same, right? It's like, how do you ensure that you're having that dialogue? And we use a whole host of different things. So for example, we have this thing called the customer panel, right? And it's a simple thing. It's 5,000 of our customers represented by customers, by segments, by different demographics. And essentially, they are kind of a sounding board for us as we try new things. So if we try a new website, if we try a new app, whatever it is, that is a good sounding board for us to say, like, what do you think about this? Is this going to work? Is this not going to work? But it only gets you those. So we do it virtually. So you talked about the powerful of being virtual, right? We couldn't get 5,000 customers at any given time in one place. So it is essentially a virtual community that we rotate around, so we don't have the same customers all the time. But then we also go to the communities, right? And one of the big things, so being a big champion of DEI efforts within National Grid, and being a Spanish-speaking professional, we serve a lot of Spanish-speaking communities. And one of the things that we've done heavily is like making sure we're sending employees that speak Spanish to go and talk to those communities and make sure they can communicate with those folks in their first language, so they can feel comfortable telling you, like, these are the challenges that I have. These are the things that are concerning to us. These are the things that are happening in my community that might not be happening in any other community. And I think for us, there's kind of a broad approach when you're dealing with that many customers, but that doesn't take away from that individual kind of more community approach that you need to continue to have. I would say probably one of the biggest shifts that we're facing also in our service area, just because of our climate, culturally, I think the expectations of the utility are also changing, right? So if you think about electrification of transport, right? Like, for any of you that are in the Northeast, we get pretty massive storms, both in the winter and the summer, right? And for the most part, today, people can still get in their car and go to a neighbor, go to a friend, go to a hotel, right? And be in a place where they have power. What happens if you have 2 houses with 2 EVs, right? Like, they won't be able to even leave their houses, right? So like the level of the commitment and the expectations of us are different. And as we think about electrifying heat, any of you, again, that visit our service area, it does get pretty cold, right? So, it's one thing when you still have heat and your home is somewhat comfortable. What happens when you don't have electricity and you don't have heat? So I think for us, that's a big cultural shift. And with that, I think the level of accountability and responsibility we have to take has to shift, right? So I always talk about, we've been a critical provider of a critical service for hundreds of years. But now the stakes are getting raised, and they're getting more complex, because now it's not just your business, it's not just your TV, it's not just the internet. Now it's the way you heat your home, it's the way you move. And that cultural shift requires us to think about how we operate the grid, how do we engage with customers in a whole different way. And that's a lot of what my team does, is thinking about, like, what is that going to look like? Because we need to have different tools and different things to serve different customers. And I keep repeating this to my team. We always get excited about millennials. We always get excited about the younger folks. That's great. What about those folks that are in upstate New York, in the middle of the Finger Lakes, that they still don't want to be part of this transition? Like, we still have to serve them, right? So for us, what I like about my role is I get to play in both, right? And you have to think about, how do you serve those that are really in the cutting edge and want to be like the latest and greatest technology, and those that want to keep just your power cheap and reliable. And that's a bit of the challenge we have.
Thank you. So Kim, you know, we're talking about those tools that Carlos is mentioning, and just the evolving technological landscape in general. How can utilities better manage the logistics of the technology and data systems demanded by the modern grid, so with a bias towards agility?
Right. So I think that what we're really talking about here is the future of work, and how are we going to engage our employees not just into this new future, but how will the grid respond? And maybe this is a great opportunity for me to say, from the innovation lens, one thing that we've been able to do to make this more modern for everyone is, I'm looking at an innovation portfolio right now on my phone, and it looks like Pinterest. It doesn't look like a spreadsheet. And what's really great about this is there's over 500 challenge statements here of what utilities are really trying to solve today, and a big trend of that is going to be distributed, agile infrastructure. So how are we going to be able to deliver affordable, reliable power in a new agile and distributed way? Over 500 challenge statements here, and what's great is this is a really good way to tie in the last question, which was how do we bring in the new folks, the new generation into the workforce, and these are the types of software programs that they want to see. There's no reason why we have to keep going back to the well and using those old spreadsheets, right? Innovation and cultures of creating new and transformation is about thinking differently. How would Amazon solve this grid problem, right? We need to change our framework and our perspective, and I think we could get lessons as you start to think about distributed networks. Think what customers are in your service territory that actually have to deliver that type of infrastructure. So there could be a lot of learning journeys that you could be taking your employees on that are customers right in your backyard that could explain, you know, here's how we had to deliver more of an agile distributed type of network. So think about, you know, it's not just the delivery of the electrons, but you could walk in and talk to UPS, FedEx, Amazon and say, how do you deliver those packages? And potentially frame up a new way to be looking at your business and your challenge and engage your customer at the same time, because they're also thinking about how are they using renewable resources as well. So I think there's just a great opportunity here to be framing things in the future, be thinking about the future of work, be thinking about the new generation that's coming on to your networks and how they're going to want to be able to collaborate inside of these ecosystems. And you can easily, as an extension of that, bring your customer into that conversation, and I think gain some really valuable we call it day in the life learnings through that interaction.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go.
The only thing I was going to add is, but innovation is expensive, right? So as trustees or those of us who are in decision making, I mean, I think for utilities to be able to execute everything that we've discussed here for the last couple of days, I think the number one responsibility is that our balance sheets have to be able to support the investments we want to make. We can talk about improving the customer experience and recruiting the best talent and making these clean, energy investments, but it starts with, number one, the balance sheet, right? It has to be strong. We need to be mindful about that. It's also about maximizing newly available capital, such as funding. We talked about funding through grants and tax. So we have to have those tough conversations about, okay, we're going to be conservative with our budget, but we also have to find other ways to innovate. I know at CPS recently we received a couple of grants, and that will allow us to address the most vulnerable population. And then lastly, we're already talking about it, and that's modernizing technology to progress the business. But we talk a lot about agility, but we need to also just talk about adapting, because adapting and agility are two different things. And so we talk about resiliency, we talk a lot about agility, but at the end of the day, it's about people adopting and being open to different ways of having to do what we need to do, because it is so complex and we are serving several generations and there's a lot of choices. Even with CPS being the only energy company in San Antonio, people have choices. People are looking to other organizations and sometimes hoping for deregulation. because they want choices. And so we do have a responsibility from a governance perspective to make sure we have the funding to be strategic in those investments, because it's also for external stakeholders and internal stakeholders.
Yeah, and I would just add one thing. I think many of you are probably have seen all the grid modernization plans that every utility in this country has, and they're all big. They all talk about like 5, 10-year investments, and they're usually in the millions and billions of dollars that have to be invested. And I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen in my role over the last few years is, if I'm a consumer sitting on the other side, I'm like, you're telling me you're going to spend $1 billion in 5 years, and at the end is when I'm going to see some value? It's a really challenging proposition for anyone to be sold. And I can tell you, like, if any of you are customers, you probably, like, if you were outside of this industry, you would probably be like, that doesn't sound right. And I actually feel like, we do need to fundamentally change the work gets done in utilities. Like, there's not an opportunity to keep trying to do the same work. Like, I've done grid modernization, I've done ADMS implementations, I've done all the big things that need to be done. But I can tell you, like, we got approved of this big AMI program. Is $800 million, right? It's a lot of money. And it was a 3-year deploy, like 3-year back office, so then we can put the first meter after 3 years. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like, it just doesn't feel right. And we challenged ourselves and we said, we're gonna put meters on year 1. It might not be perfect, it might not have everything, but we need to do this faster and start to get to that value faster. And I think, look, utilities are not comfortable with that. I can tell you, for me, it was an uphill battle. But now that we've done it, we're creating a bit of a momentum and saying, actually, you know what? There might be some logic to this. There might be some merits to it. And I think it is on all of us as an industry to say, we cannot keep accepting that the value will come at the end of the journey. The value will come in 5, 10 years. The value has to come really quickly, so we can all see, like, okay, well, I'm starting to do a little bit. It might not get the full thing, but I can do a little bit. And that's a big cultural shift that I think all of, and having 2 chairwomen here on the table, like, we all should be pushing for that, because that's what it's going to get us to see the fruit of this value in a year instead of 10.
Yeah.
If I could, I'm sorry, just add. But that value is why you saw the early statistics that no one says that a utility company, was it 25 or 35 years, it's less, is because employees want value. A pension plan is no longer enough. It's great. And so the younger generation also wants to see a value faster. How am I going to be valued by my employer? And that value system is very different for this younger generation, even for the older generation. And so that was the only thing I wanted to add, because it is about how we also value the employees of these organizations.
Oh, yeah. It's like what Rudy said. We want to work to live, not live to work. And I think that younger generations very much don't want to work to the grave. One thing that Kim and Nancy, you both were talking about that really resonated with me was the idea of presenting information in new ways to create more engagement, because I think one common theme that you guys have been talking about, and honestly that I've been hearing in every panel underlying it, is that we're better when we are communicative, when we are collaborating with all involved stakeholders, customers, regulators, business partners, nonprofits, community organizers, et cetera, and so it seems like we need to reimagine the ways in which we present information. I just want to give a quick shout out to our graphic designer Mia Dance, who, like, we could just have a list of names up here, but she made all these wonderful cards. She designed your badges, and it just kind of goes to show that, like, you can really make things pop, look interesting. I hear all the time, like, energy isn't sexy. This industry isn't sexy, and it's like, why can't it be? Why can't we do something like what what you were showing, Kim, where you have information in with visual flair. So yeah, I guess my question is, how can we make energy sexier?
That's a slogan.
Well, I mean, it is, as long as you, I mean, it is, and then it isn't, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think the thing is having multi-channels, as we talked before. Digital is great, making it look cool is great, but what I found coming out of COVID is actually people want to see you more. People have a feeling of disconnection. And so as much as we've amped all our social media, blah, 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 we've also gone back and fully doubled down on face-to-face community engagement. I did a community walk in my neighborhood. We picked a neighborhood that had a higher level of low-income families, and we walked door to door asking them, what are your issues? What's going on? How can we help you? We have sent more people out, in the community. We have a sustainable communities program where we realize it's not just, can you pay the bill? It's, are you healthy? Do you have a good job? Can we help you get job education? Can we help you connect you through navigators and other programs, that it's not just about the bill, and our responsibility is no longer just about the bill. It's how do we help our customers be whole people. So it's not exactly making it sexier, it's making it more meaningful and accessible and showing that we care. I mean, we have our call center agents that spend time with our customers, and if we hear that they're going through a hard time, we send them a personal card and sign it. I mean, I've signed cards. When my husband passed away unexpectedly, the SMUD community came out. When we hear of things in the community, we realize that at the end of the day, these are people that want to be treated like people, that want to feel that we want more than just your money in our bank account, right? And so that's really been the difference, I would say, coming out of COVID. It's trying to hit people at all walks of life where they want and where they can and have that ability. And so as I see all the snazzy, I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, the TikTok challenge, watching those kid videos, we had a theme, and they submitted, videos for our carbon zero future. It's amazing to see what they can do, right? It's amazing to see what they can do in 30 seconds. But we still want to spend that 30 minutes with someone who is wheelchair bound, who cannot even figure out how to fill out their low-income assistance form. We still need to help people get the care that they need when and where they want it, because we're always going to have a very diverse population, and we can't leave people behind. And that's where we have the Join the Challenge, Join the Charge with our campaign for zero carbon by 2030, because we have set this goal, but to talk about the balance sheet, so I'm a board member and I have to approve the budget, we have agreed to not increase our rates higher than COLA, higher than where we are today in inflation. That's hard to do. And our poor CEO was like, I think his eyes were bugging out of his head when we said that, because our customers cannot sustain 5, 10, 15% increases just because we want to modernize the grid, just because we know it needs to do. Because I know how it feels to live in a house in PG&E land and not be able to pay the bill. I know the difference when my mom had to choose between paying for gas and paying for a utility bill. And we will try our best as we move toward this zero carbon to make sure that it's not on the backs of the people who can't handle it. And that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge. We are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get to where we want to go, but it cannot be based on a commercial or residential bill. And that's going to be the challenge. And so we're very lucky. We have great partnerships. We rained money last year, $300 million. We're hoping for another $400 million this year. But a lot of it, we had to do whether or not we had grants. And so we had to look at operational efficiencies. We had to look at where we could save, because the money tree doesn't always grow money for us. And so we need to make sure that all of our customers are engaged and understand and feel like they're part of it, and not feel like it's being forced on them. Because at the end of the day, it's lights on and bills low. That is what most of our customers care about. Do they care about where it's coming from? Yeah, but not if their bill goes up 20, 30%.
And just to add, I mean, I think that's where Rudy is perfect for the job. I mean, one of Rudy's biggest strengths, he has a lot of skill sets that are great, but it's being able to connect with the community, the average person, because at the end of the day, you know, I live in the poorest district in San Antonio. The average salary is $35,000. $35,000 is the average salary in 78207 in San Antonio. So when we talk about the value for someone is being able to pay their bill. I had similar experience such as yourself, where we would walk in with my mom and make payment plans, and CPS as a young girl, as an adult, has never not helped me or anybody else. I spent a lot of time in the community, to the point before I came to this conference, I had someone, a senior citizen, call me. They call my office at Webhead a lot, and my staff already knows in their help desk, and she needs help with solar. There's a lot of solar scams, so she's asked me, I see you in the paper, I see you online, I see you in the community, can you please help me? And so that's the kind of leadership that you need in today's environment, where you need to make yourself accessible. And I think that's, again, the beauty of what you're hearing on this panel, is that it's not just about modernizing the system, it's about the real engagement with gente, with people, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. We're only as good as the people that work for us, and we're only as good as the people that we service. And so I know there's a couple of people probably who want to talk more, but it really is that simple. Nobody cares about the fancy technology. They care that you provide a service. So make that sexy, make that engaging, make that a beautiful experience, and the money will come, and the talent will be there. But it's about how you lead and how you transform that relationship that probably matters more than the digital business transformation. Nobody cares about that. You're just gonna have to get it done.
Some people do care. Some people
But
do
what
care.
I mean by that is,
Just saying.
I'm a nerd, we care, but what I'm
Just
saying
saying.
is, like, in technology, you know, they don't care if I use full stack or if I'm gonna build it, you know, DevSecOps. They don't care if I'm gonna use, you know, they don't care about that. Give me the experience. I wanna turn on this phone and I want to pay my bill, and in addition to that, I can't afford to pay $300. Where's my payment plan arrangement? That's what they care about. On the back end, that's what we care about, but in the front end, it's that user experience that they care about.
So Kim, where does the rubber meet the road in terms of discussions like these turning into action that make for a stronger grid? You know, what would you recommend as a leader among innovators to the people in the audience? What do you want them to go out and take from this?
Yeah, and I was going to jump on this conversation. So if you think about why these apps are so sexy, it's because we're communicating. It's a new way for us to do the time-old tradition of communicating and connecting with people. And if you want to de-risk your innovation process, the best way to do that is through collaboration and ecosystem. So coming to conferences like this, talking to your peers, and finding out where the rubber meets the road for them. Hey, we just finished the deployment of, you know, this type of a project. Was it valuable? Did it work? What's something that you learned from it that I could share? And being able to have these communities now built in the virtual world, you can go home from conferences like these and continue to connect with your peers, because it's the collaboration and the sharing of knowledge across utilities which will de-risk, and, to get back to the earlier point, make it more affordable. And another tip that I'll leave you with on where the rubber meets the road is get really good at crafting your challenge statements. Where I see too many utilities get hung up and then it begins to cost a lot of money is you're trying to bite off more than you can pilot. And I like to tell utilities, think about piloting an increment of 90 to 100 days. And I know that sounds impossible, but I've seen it be done by having a very concise way of being able to explain the problem that you're trying to solve, and we get it down to one sentence for our utilities. Now you can write a really tight test plan. You know exactly what it is that you're going to test, and you can measure it relentlessly. How many days is it really taking us to test? How much did that pilot cost? And oh, by the way, here's going to be the impact as a result of bringing in this new idea over the old. Is there a financial benefit for us to do things differently and new? because in the innovation space, those of us that are innovative have a lot of ideas that are full of potential. But when we present those ideas to our utilities, they only see the risk. So we have to get really good about how we communicate the problems we're trying to solve and test them quickly, affordably, and make decisions on what we're going to do with that. So that's what I would leave people, hopefully with some constructive help when you get back.
And I'll just add one thing, having done innovation for many years, and it's a line that I think I heard at a conference or from someone, but actually it's a really good selling line for anyone in a utility. You know, you talked about uncertainty, you talked about risk, and I used to say, like, I think as utilities, we need to get comfortable with uncertainty. Like, risk can be managed. Like, risk is something you can manage. Like, the thing that I think we all struggle is we confound risk with uncertainty. Like, you know, sometimes the uncertainty is not knowing if the thing you're going to try is going to work out. And if you do it quicker, if you take 100 days and 90 days, whatever that is, that actually is a small investment that I think most utilities can live with. What they cannot live with is, I'm going to take 3 years and $5 million to test this thing and see if it works. Right? So you can manage a bit of that uncertainty by saying, we're going to do it quicker, and we're going to try to eliminate that uncertainty on whether this thing works or not quicker and cheaper. Risk can be managed. Like, is this thing going to, affect the grid? Is this thing going to affect this thing? It's going to affect all those things. You can work around it. If you're driving innovation, feel comfortable that there's not about eliminating the risk. Like, there's always going to be risk when you're trying new things. But just saying, look, we're just going to mitigate risk the same way we mitigate risk. Like in California, we mitigate fire risk. We have mitigation risk for other things. So we're really good industry to mitigate risk. It's just the uncertainty that we all get really uncomfortable with. It's just get your leadership to say, you know what, uncertainty, we can be okay as long as it's a short period of time, and we'll know whether this thing played out or not. And I think just trying to get into that mentality, I think helps everyone, both at a senior level, but also at the more working levels, to make that progress and say, this worked, this didn't work, and let's move on. And I would say, just speaking from Nancy and Janie, I think the biggest thing that I've heard from all of this, and I'm somewhat jealous of both of you, that you have that small footprint, you can have that dialogue with all your customers, but it's that voice of the customer. That is the success to all of it, right? I feel sometimes, and there's many vendors on this room, and I don't mean this to be offensive, but I feel at times we have solutions looking for problems. Our customers have many problems out there so that we can just go and try to solve it. Those are real and meaningful things if we just take the time and go and talk to them. And that's, I think, a piece that I feel as an industry sometimes we forget, right? They're the reason why we exist. So go and talk to them. They're going to tell you for sure what they want and don't want. So if you actually take the time to do that, I think all of us as an industry, we're going to be a lot more successful in the future.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about something you like. So this is expensive, but this is where automotive and manufacturing is already invested, and we're going to talk about digital twins, right? And so that's an opportunity there where we talk about we might potentially want to make an investment in this or that. But now you have the ability to be able to leverage that technology and say, okay, well, we noticed in 78207 that the energy burden is at 90%. And so you will be able to use that kind of technology to determine why, and then what kind of programs we can deploy before you actually do them. So there's always that upfront cost. But again, if those strategic investments are done with those I would say business cases or user cases that you want to do, then it's worth making that investment, right? So that you don't have to spend $800 million and then it didn't work. So now you have the opportunity to maybe spend that money up front and then determine, okay, it's going to cost us this much, or we're going to deploy this energy mix. And so this is really, at the end of the day, yes, we're talking about the people. We've kind of downplayed, the business transformation component. But the moral of, I guess, the story here is that we can leverage technology, but it needs to be used strategically. And when we do make those investments, there's got to be that value. There's got to be that approach. Because if not, then we're just spending money. And we're not here for that.
And I wanted to add a different business model that SMUD has embarked upon, largely because We brought people to the party who forgot who brought them there. So I'll just say it, it's fine. So, we were one of the early adopters and partners of what became O-Power, which was acquired by Oracle. Talk about who forgot to, brought them to the party, right? And we learned from that mistake of, we know we have great collateral in our leadership team and our customers and our staff. And what we did is we invested in them and they failed to invest in us, right? And so now we embark on strategic partnerships with companies because we realized that when it came to ADMS, when it came to the systems, no one had what we wanted. And instead of keeping our, continually band-aiding our homegrown projects, we said, well, we have the collateral, we have the experience, who wants to partner with us? And we might want to make sure we get a cut of the deal. And that when we are first at the table going forward and not having to pay full freight going forward when we help design your product. So I think this is a different mentality of a utility where we were just the consumer and like, give me what you have and we hope it's gonna work for us. We've changed that. We know what we want. We know what we need. And we want to make sure that we're part of that collateral, that we're part of that conversation going forward. So I think also looking at how to spend money differently and also realizing that we are in the driver's seat. We should be driving the conversation and we should be benefiting from all the man hours. And so when we look at our R&D, which we're very fortunate to have, we have a robust R&D department. We have over 200 projects running at any different time. And what's great about it is we're willing to take those risks. We're willing to take those challenges, which is a little different, right? We always used to say, we wanted to be on the cutting edge, not the bleeding edge. Well, we're running out of time. 2030 will be here before we know it. And so we realize that we have to figure out things and fail fast and move on, which is not a typical way of thinking in the utility industry. It's like 3 years of design and like another 3 years of implementation. And then 6 years later you go, I don't even know what this is because the people that aren't even here anymore. And so we have to see that we need to get there, but we have to be the drivers. I don't know what is going to be the magic bullet, right? It's going to be more of a magic buckshot approach to get us to 2030 because we still have that little bit left. We're hoping that we'll get there, but it's through our R&D, through our partners, through driving the conversation and saying this is what we want, not what you're willing to give us, is what's going to get us to zero carbon by 2030. It's not waiting. We can't wait anymore.
All right. Well, we are out of time, but please give a round of applause for these panelists. You're like the 4 smartest people I know.